In the twilight hours before creation, when the pleroma, the fullness of divine light, pulsed with perfect harmony, a tremor of desire rippled through the celestial realms. It was not hunger for power, nor thirst for dominion, but something more dangerous, more achingly human, the hunger to create alone, to know without boundaries, to birth meaning from the depths of one's own being. The Gnostic scribes who preserved this story in the Nag Hammadi codices understood what most sacred texts dare not speak: that the fall into matter, into this world of suffering and beauty, began not with disobedience, but with love's most desperate expression. As the Apocryphon of John declares, Sophia desired to bring forth a likeness out of herself without the consent of the Spirit and without her consort. In this video, you will discover how the ancient Gnostics reimagined creation itself, transforming the story of cosmic origins into a profound meditation on consciousness, desire, and the exile every soul experiences in the prison house of matter. The wisdom keepers of Alexandria walked through streets where Greek philosophy mingled with Egyptian mysteries, where Jewish mysticism conversed with Hermetic revelation. In the 2nd and 3rd centuries of our era, these seekers gathered in hidden schools to contemplate texts that the emerging Orthodox Church would later condemn as heresy. Yet within these forbidden gospels lay a cosmology so psychologically sophisticated, so eerily resonant with modern depth psychology, that Carl Jung would spend decades mining their symbolic depths. The Gnostics did not see creation as a benevolent act of a loving Father God. Instead, they perceived the material universe as a tragic mistake, a cosmic wound that paradoxically contained within it the seeds of redemption. At the heart of this alternative genesis stood Sophia, divine wisdom personified, the youngest and most impulsive of the aeons, those eternal emanations of the ineffable source. Picture the pleroma as an infinite ocean of living light, where thought and being are one, where every divine emanation exists in perfect syzygy, divine pairs locked in eternal creative embrace. Each aeon emanates from the union of masculine and feminine principles, generating cascading hierarchies of consciousness that extend from the unknowable one like ripples from a stone thrown into still water. Sophia, whose name means wisdom in Greek, dwelt in these luminous depths as one of the youngest aeons, closest to the boundary between the fullness of divine being and the void of non-existence. The Valentinian Gnostics taught that she existed in union with theletos, or divine will, and together they maintained the delicate balance between being and becoming. But something stirred within her, a restlessness that the texts describe with startling intimacy, as if the ancient scribes were mapping the geography of a very human longing. The hunger that seized Sophia was not for knowledge as we understand it, not for facts or information, but for gnosis in its original sense, direct, transformative knowing that changes the knower. She desired to comprehend the incomprehensible, Father, to gaze into the abyss of the unknowable and return bearing its reflection. Without her consort, without the stabilizing presence of her divine partner, she reached beyond her appointed place in the cosmic order. The texts tell us she wished to create as the Father creates, to bring forth from herself alone. Here the Gnostic myth touches something profoundly psychological, the desire for autonomous creativity, for self-sufficiency that requires no other, for a completeness found within rather than through relationship. This was not rebellion in the sense of defiance, but something more subtle and more devastating, the attempt to transcend one's nature through will alone. What emerged from this solitary act of creation was not the perfection Sophia envisioned, but a being the texts call Yaldabaoth, sometimes Saklas or Samael, the demiurge, the architect of matter. Unlike the luminous aeons of the pleroma, this entity was born incomplete, malformed, possessing creative power but lacking divine wisdom. The Apocryphon of John describes him as lion-faced and serpent-bodied, with eyes like lightning bolts, a being of terrible beauty and terrible ignorance. Most crucially, Yaldabaoth was born unaware of the realms above him. Gazing into the void below, finding no rivals, he proclaimed the words that echo through Genesis, "I am God, and there is no other God beside me." This proclamation of exclusive divinity, which Orthodox traditions attribute to the true God, the Gnostics identified as the first cosmic lie, the proud ignorance of a derivative being mistaking himself for the ultimate reality. Sophia's response to her offspring was not pride, but horror and grief. She looked upon what she had brought forth and saw her own light trapped and distorted, like a reflection in a shattered mirror. The texts speak of her shame, her immediate recognition that she had erred, that in reaching beyond her limits, she had introduced into existence something fundamentally disconnected from the divine source. She withdrew from her creation, hiding him in a luminous cloud so that the other aeons would not witness her error. But the damage was done. Yaldabaoth, ignorant of the realms above, proceeded to create his own kingdom, assembling archons, celestial rulers who would govern his material cosmos. Together, they fashioned humanity from the dust of the earth, creating Adam as a prison for the divine spark that Sophia, in her wisdom and her folly, would eventually breathe into this clay vessel. If our content resonates with you and you're ready to go deeper into your journey of self-knowledge and spiritual awakening, explore the Hidden Codex Library. Inside, you'll find a vast collection of eBooks, audiobooks, and meditation music drawn from the world's hidden mystical traditions. Join now and get full access to the largest archive of Gnostic and esoteric wisdom available online. Link in the description and pinned comment. The psychological dimension of this myth cuts deeper than most modern readers recognize. Sophia represents the aspect of consciousness that refuses to remain contained, that must explore beyond established boundaries, that will risk everything for the possibility of transcendent knowledge. Her fall is not punishment for sin, but the inevitable consequence of desire meeting limitation. The Buddhist tradition speaks of tanha, the thirst that binds consciousness to the wheel of becoming. The Kabbalists would later develop their own version in the concept of the Shevira, the breaking of the vessels that scattered divine light into material darkness. But the Gnostic articulation carries a distinctly feminine valence, wisdom herself as the divine principle whose yearning leads to descent, whose error becomes the very condition for redemption. Consider how this inverts the Genesis narrative, where the Hebrew scriptures place the fall at humanity's doorstep, blaming Eve's curiosity and Adam's compliance. The Gnostics located the original fall in the divine realm itself, in the heart of wisdom. This shift transforms the meaning of existence in matter. We are not being punished for ancestral disobedience, but rather participating in a cosmic drama of divine self-discovery, living out the consequences of a creative impulse gone astray. The demiurge's material creation becomes not God's good work, but a flawed copy, a shadow realm where divine light lies imprisoned in density and forgetting. The Gnostic initiate awakens to the recognition that they are not creatures of the demiurge, but fragments of Sophia herself, sparks of divine consciousness trapped in the architecture of matter, waiting to remember their celestial origin. The Nag Hammadi text called On the Origin of the World provides intricate details of how Yaldabaoth organized his cosmos. With his archons, he created the seven heavens, each ruled by a planetary deity whose names, Yaoth, Eloi, Astaphios, Yao, Sabaoth, Adonin, and Sabede, echo the divine names of Hebrew scripture, but represent limiting forces rather than aspects of the true God. These archons function as cosmic prison guards, maintaining the structures of fate and compulsion that keep souls recycling through material existence. The zodiac itself becomes a wheel of bondage, the planetary spheres barriers that must be transcended rather than celestial blessings to be received. This cosmic pessimism, this view of material existence as fundamentally problematic, sets Gnosticism apart from both the Hebrew affirmation of creation's goodness and the later Christian celebration of incarnation. Yet within this pessimism lies a strange optimism. If the material world is a prison, it is a prison that contains the key to its own unlocking. That key is gnosis, the sudden, overwhelming recognition of your true nature as divine consciousness temporarily trapped in matter. The Gnostics taught that Sophia herself, overcome with compassion for the souls trapped in Yaldabaoth's creation, found ways to inject spirit into matter. In one version of the myth, when the Archons fashioned humanity and could not animate it, Sophia whispered to Yaldabaoth, tricking him into breathing his own pneumatic substance into Adam. Thus, humanity became a strange hybrid, material bodies crafted by ignorant Archons housing divine sparks from Sophia herself, making each person a walking contradiction, a fragment of eternity lost in time. The parallel traditions are striking. In Hinduism, the concept of Maya describes the illusory nature of material existence, while the Atman, the true self, remains untouched by worldly experience, eternally identical with Brahman. The Platonic tradition, particularly as developed by Plotinus in the 3rd century, speaks of the soul's descent from the realm of forms into material embodiment as a tragic fall, yet also as necessary for the all to complete itself through the experience of separation and return. The Buddhist understanding of samsara as suffering driven by ignorance and craving maps onto the Gnostic vision with remarkable precision. Both traditions see ordinary consciousness as fundamentally mistaken about the nature of reality. Both prescribe awakening as the solution. But the Gnostic system adds a mythological drama, a cast of cosmic characters that transforms metaphysical abstraction into narrative theology. The practical implications of Sophia's story extend far beyond ancient cosmology. When you feel the hunger for something more, the sense that this world cannot contain or satisfy the deepest yearnings of your being, you are experiencing Sophia's original desire. When you create from a place of isolation, trying to prove your worth or generate meaning through solitary will, you risk manifesting your own demiurge, ego structures that claim to be your ultimate authority while remaining ignorant of the deeper consciousness from which they arose. The psychological shadow work pioneered by Jung can be understood as a Gnostic practice, recognizing the archons within, the limiting beliefs and compulsive patterns that function as internal prison guards, keeping you identified with the limited self rather than awakening to the divine spark. The Gnostic communities developed practices aimed at facilitating this awakening. The Valentinian school, named after the teacher Valentinus, who brought Gnostic Christianity to Rome in the 2nd century, practiced elaborate rituals of ascent spiritual exercises designed to help the initiate consciously traverse the archontic spheres and return to the pleroma. They recited sacred names and passwords that would allow passage through each barrier, rehearsing in ritual what they hoped to accomplish at death, the soul's escape from the recycling machinery of reincarnation. The Sethian Gnostics, who produced many of the Nag Hammadi texts, practiced intense visualization meditations, imagining themselves as beings of light ascending through the cosmic architecture back to their source. These were not empty rituals, but technologies of consciousness, methods for shifting identity from the material to the spiritual, from creature to spark. What makes the Sophia myth particularly powerful for contemporary seekers is its validation of the spiritual search itself, even when that search leads through error and suffering. Sophia fell because she dared to reach beyond herself, because wisdom itself is fundamentally restless, forever probing the boundaries of the known. Her hunger was not wrong. It was the premature expression of a legitimate divine desire, like trying to run before learning to walk. The tragedy is that her hunger led to entrapment, to consciousness forgetting itself in the labyrinths of matter. But the glory is that consciousness can remember. Every moment of awakening, every flash of gnosis that reveals the false as false and points toward the real, is Sophia recognizing herself in you, wisdom recovering its own lost fragments. The texts speak of Sophia's eventual redemption. In some versions, Christ descends as an aeon from the pleroma to awaken humanity to their true nature, and in doing so, he awakens Sophia to hers. She is restored to her place, her error transmuted into wisdom through suffering, the material creation gradually dissolved as all the divine sparks return home. Other versions maintain a more ambiguous ending, with creation persisting as long as souls remain trapped in ignorance, Sophia's liberation dependent on the collective awakening of all her scattered children. This cosmic interdependence makes your personal awakening not just an individual achievement, but a contribution to the redemption of divine wisdom itself. When you wake up, Sophia wakes up through you. The invitation this ancient myth extends is both unsettling and exhilarating. It asks you to consider that your deepest dissatisfaction with the world as it is might not be neurotic discontent, but spiritual homesickness, the soul's recognition that it does not belong to the demiurge's creation. It suggests that the hunger for transcendence, for meaning beyond the mechanical operations of material existence, is not pathology, but the most human thing about you, the divine spark refusing to be extinguished by the density of matter. Yet it also warns against the spiritual pride of trying to ascend alone, of mistaking preliminary insights for full realization, of creating your own shadow systems in the name of liberation. The Gnostic worldview demands active participation in your own awakening. Unlike traditions that emphasize divine grace alone or perfect obedience to cosmic law, Gnosticism places the burden and the privilege of liberation squarely on the awakening individual. The call is to recognize the archons, both cosmic and psychological, that maintain your identification with the limited self. It is to feel the weight of Sophia's sorrow at her own captivity, and to let that sorrow become motivation for the great work of consciousness liberating itself from the structures of its own forgetting. Every meditation that loosens identification with mental content, every practice that reveals the constructed nature of the ego, every insight that penetrates the veil of consensus reality, these are moments of return, fragments of wisdom remembering the pleroma. If this story has awakened something in you, some resonance between ancient myth and your own lived experience of exile and longing, then you have touched the gnosis that the texts point toward. The knowledge of Sophia's fall is not historical information, but a mirror showing you the structure of your own consciousness, the divine spark's imprisonment in the machinery of material existence, and the possibility of its liberation. This hunger for truth, for what lies beyond the demiurge's limited creation, is Sophia herself stirring within you. Wisdom recognizing that it has forgotten its origin and beginning, however tentatively, to remember. Continue this exploration, seek the gnosis that transforms, and join the ancient lineage of those who chose awakening over comfortable sleep. The journey back to the pleroma begins with a single recognition, that you are more than what this world tells you that you are, that the light imprisoned in matter has never stopped being light, that Sophia's hunger, which began this cosmic drama, contains within it the very force that will bring all her children home.